Hello everyone. Today I just would like to give you an overview of the requirements for this unit 1 of Module 2. So the conceptual model will give you a little kind of a brief overview about database in general, and then I will talk about the specifics of the requirement of the mind map. So there are several types of database that are out there, and one of the most commonly used ones are the hierarchical type of database, relational, and object-oriented, which was kind of introduced recently. And there is also a hybrid relational object oriented database type. But the most commonly used ones are actually the relational database. Why relational database is commonly used is actually because of its ease of use in terms of retrieval of the data, especially using SQL commands. In our project, we are actually using the relational database. So why do we need a database? Why don't we just use a big table of a spreadsheet, and that also people call it also a database? So actually there are a lot of problems with using only a spreadsheet. If you have a spreadsheet, that means you have the information can become very large amount, and then that would become actually unmanageable in spreadsheet or in a manual form, which is the case actually right now. So rather than waiting until the end of the month, as it is the case here in this project, that Dr. Manuz at the end of the month, she collects all the hard copies of the reports or the documents, and then she tries to come up or to organize a report for the board of directors or trustees, which is actually time consuming and not easy to do. So that's one of the reasons why we need a database. Another reason is that if you want to maintain records for ongoing use, you are not piling them up in the drawers or in the cabinets, and they get lost or so. And then the information is subject to many changes, change of address, pricing, or changes of last name. In our case, in our database, for example, there might be some changes of address. That's very common. And also there is a change of last name if somebody got married. So using a database will make it much easier to do such things and keep track of the historical records. You want to generate reports based on the information. So if you have a database, it will make it much easier to generate reports. You can generate reports either using the wizard that you have, I believe, went through using during your tutorials on the Access book, and sorry, and or you can actually create a query that answers your questions or whatever information that you want to appear on the report, and you can use that as your report as well actually. And there are so many ways you can create a report, and we will review them when we come to them yet now. By then you want also to reduce the human errors in data entry. For example, if you are using let's say Excel sheet, or you are using manual, you might actually have some human errors such as spelling, or maybe you are entering the wrong information in the wrong field. But if you are using a database, you can actually program the fields or the tables to accept certain types of characters. For example, for age or for date of birth, you can't actually enter like text types of characters. So that's one of the ways that you can benefit from the creation of database. And so far you have learned in Module 1 that how to create database and its components such as the tables and how to connect them in a relational form, as well as how to create the fields and the constraints that you need for each field, the data type, and sometimes you might use the masks and so on. And the forms also, you learned how to create to use some of the combo boxes or the lookup fields in the forms. You also learned how to build queries, just to join more than one or to collect data from more than one table in a simple query, and also reports using the wizard or the queries. Now you are asked actually to apply in this project. You are asked to apply your database skills that you have learned in Module 1 in designing a clinically focused database. So what is the purpose of developing a database? So the purpose is to give you enough skills to communicate with and understand the IT professionals who actually build and maintain the HER or the health the EHR or the electronic health records. So this is very important skill because some of the programmers, they just talk in jargon or in IT jargon. They just talk bits and bytes, and they are so. And you also, as health professions, you might just be talking about some clinical terminologies and standards that the IT person might not understand. So it is important that you get a touch or a flavor of communicating with an IT profession and be in their shoes in this case. That way it makes it much easier when you go out there and work in the work field, in the workplace. So far you have been able to look at the requirements document, which gives you a lot of information that might be overwhelming, but it is very helpful when it comes to designing the conceptual model. You have also an interview with the organization staff and the director of the JC or the director of the program, and you also had a tour around their facility in Second Life. So that was at least that should give you an understanding of the business processes as well as the activities, the daily activities, and should enable you actually to ask questions about the business rules and the data requirements and so on. I believe you have done that during the Second Life tour or Second Life session. I will just give you a brief briefly, not the whole model, because I want you to work on it too, but I know it was not maybe easy enough to most of you to come up with this mind map conceptual model, but this is kind of I have done it I using the mind map, and it should be let me explain what I have here. Actually, after I attended the interview and looked at the requirements or the requirements document, I figured out that there are several details or data elements and their values, and also there are standards that I need. We are required, or you are required, to terminology standards that you need to apply. So, for example, here I looked at the description of product in the requirements document, and it says that we need to collect information about demographics. That includes the name, so the resident name. So the resident name actually needs to be broken down into more details: first name, middle name, or middle initial, and and last name. Why do we need to do that? We need to do that because what if we want to sort out, or the director of the program asks you as a nurse, for example, to give her the report with sorting out, or only a report that includes those people whose last name ends with Martinis, let's say, or those people whose first name starts with Marys, and so on. So it is very important that we have this ability to break down the name. And then also the date of birth. The date of birth, actually, some people might collect age, especially us in the research profession. We usually collect data. We ask about age because it is not possible, but if it is in the workplace, I believe age is very important. I mean, the date of birth is more important than age, because the age, people might make a mistake, or might forget, or might not be able to calculate how old they are, because that happens to us. Sometimes we say, oh, I'm 21 or 23 or so on, but if you calculate it, maybe you might be wrong or by mistake. But the date of birth is more preferable to be used than age, because it gives you more, it's more specific, and it gives you less chance of error. And we don't need to use both, because there might be actually some description or kind of a conflict. For example, date of birth might be conflicting with the age, so it would be better actually just to collect the date of birth. And when we look at gender, and also in the requirements, it says that we have some terminologies that we need to apply. The HL7 that has the administrative gender, and the administrative gender standards are female, male, and it has a code for each category, and undifferentiated. So we need to also break down the gender. So that means it's going to be in a table by itself, or a lookup table here for gender, but we will have it as, okay, so this is going to be a lookup table. Okay, and then alhamdulillah, and then we will have to look at the address. So the permanent mailing address, I believe that we talked about it in the interview, and the director said, or Dr. Manoz, or the director of the program, answered your question, and she said that there might be more than one address, so we need to have a separate address for that, or a separate table for the address, for addresses, I believe. And the address also has to be broken down into more than one uh, more than one category. For example, we have the street number, the city, state, and zip code. And also in the requirement documents, it mentions that we need to use the the US Postal Service's abbreviations for the states. So that means we will have to have a lookup table, or a separate table for the states that includes the abbreviation of the state that is connected to the mailing or to the address. And then we have the zip code. And what else about phone types, or phone numbers? The requirements, or actually the director of the program during the interview mentioned that there might be more than at least 3 types of phones. They will have a landline phone in the facility, and also they will the residents will might have a cell phone, and they will need to provide an emergency or a work phone number. So we need to collect at least 3 or 4 types of phone numbers, and then we will have actually to have a lookup table in this case that will show us actually the type. That way we can change it if for example they have a we need to add some new types of phone numbers. We can easily add them. So that's gonna be a lookup, and then the MRN, which is the medical record number. Also, it is here. It is an identifier, or it's kind of a unique number that we can use later on as an primary key, because for the resident, because it is kind of uniquely identifying each resident. Some people might say, well, we can use the social security number. Well, social security number is too long, but MRN, I believe it is also, it can do the job. So we don't need to collect such sensitive information. And then we have the problem list. The problem list also, as we mentioned that in the document, it is it can be diagnosis or surgery names, and those surgery and diagnostics names, they are actually, they have standard terminologies, or they are actually in the ICD-9 codes. So we need to use that also as a lookup field, or lookup table. So then we will look at level of risk and action. So before we look at the level of risk and action, this is kind of the results from the risk score, or the level of the risk score. We need to calculate that, and for the risk score, actually you have been provided with several questions or several categories that the nurse is going to ask the patients. Those questions actually, or variables, that include the history of falling, the secondary diagnosis, gait and mental status, and so on. So I give you here at least 2 examples kind of with their details, and then you will need to do the others or the rest. Like for example here I said history of falling, risk score, and then the history of falling. So for the history of falling, if the answer was yes, then the score is going to be 25, and then we need to have the SNOMED ID for each one of those categories, because they have they have standard terminologies. You need to use the ID for each. If it is no, we also have a standard SNOMED ID for that, and then we'll use the score, which is 0. So similarly, you will need to finish those that has kind of a small circle there. That means you will have to do it yourself, finish it yourself. I almost did the whole work for you, but you it will be good that you practice and you finish it. Maybe you need to. And then for this one, for example, the mental status, I give you some more details here. Nose own limits, and then the scores. So what you basically you are going to do here is for the level of risk and action. So the level of risk is actually based on the calculation or tallying the scores of the risk scores from here. So if the total scores of the patient after answering those questions is between, there is no risk, that means the score is between 0 and 25. So what is the action for that? Is good basic nursing care. And then level of risk and action, low to moderate, then the score is going to be 25 to something. So you need to finish that, and then there is also a recommendation for the action over there, 25 to 45. So you need to do the rest of that. So other entities or data elements that are important that were mentioned in the document requirements, or the requirements document, were date of assessment. So it is very important. And what are the reasons of the assessment? The reasons for assessment can be, as we mentioned, that every other week, so every 2 weeks there should be an assessment, or change of status, or on admission, they just came. And I hope this helps answer your questions, but if you still have any questions, please let me know. I will be waiting to hear from you.